Gavin, earlier you gave us an update on where we're at in terms of the process with the scoping plan. Once that's completed, what happens next? What happens after that?
Well, one, it will go to Governor Hochul and the legislative leaders for their consideration in January. We, as a climate council, have no authority to implement any of these policies. We recommend the policies to the legislature and the governor. A policy may be as simple as an executive order from the governor, or it may be a regulatory change from a Department of Environmental Conservation, or a legislative proposal that needs to change the law. So there's various ways that could go forward. DEC is going to, in 2023, begin to promulgate regulations about how to comply with this law. A lot has stopped. We don't issue permits in New York. To get to Anthony's point, we don't build natural gas pipelines. We're not building the necessary infrastructure. At some point, the state of New York has to come to grips with how do we keep the lights on, how do we keep it affordable, but how do we make it clean, and how do we make it comply with this law? And to me, they're just kicking the can down the road because they don't want to make those tough decisions. So in 2023, we may start to see some of those decisions being dealt with, but to date, they have not been dealt with. So the plan is what it is. It's a plan, and we'll see where it goes from there. But it has a lot of gaps in the plan.
Yeah, it's not just permits for energy projects that are being held up. There's sort of a stopgap provision in the law that says every governmental action, permit decision, grant and aid is supposed to be evaluated as to whether it's consistent with achieving the emission reduction goals of the CLCPA. I mean, that's a pretty wide open analysis. And what we're seeing, not just for power production permits, but industrial permits, most of the major facility permits have a 5-year life cycle. They come in for renewals all the time. They're always doing technical modifications to update the facility. And the agency is really challenged to turn that pretty broad, vague assessment of, is this consistent with the act? The law says if it's not consistent, is there a justification to be inconsistent? And if so, what other mitigation? And they're really having a hard time giving answers. So we're seeing an increasing number of industrial facilities continue operating on their old permits. And in fact, stymieing technical innovation at these facilities because DEC isn't quite yet sure how to write permit renewals that are consistent with the act. And as Gavin said, the scoping plan is not self-implemented. It tells the state government that decisions are supposed to be consistent with or informed by, I think is the actual term, informed by the scoping plan. But DEC needs to write, Department of Environmental Conservation needs to write updated rules for all kinds of emission sources. The legislature is going to act. They've already been moving legislation forward. We did a major update to the state's building code last year. They've had proposals on the table already to require by certain dates all new construction to be zero emissions. New York State regulatorily has already committed to all new light, I believe medium duty vehicles sold by 2035 have to be zero emissions. So things are already moving forward, but there's a lot more legislating or regulating that needs to be done to give all of us the clear guideposts as to how we're supposed to go forward.